The luxury car showroom was a world of gleaming glass, polished floors, and high-end cars that screamed wealth and status. Salesmen in sharp suits moved confidently. Among them, one young salesman, Ethan Reynolds, prided himself on knowing who could afford these cars just by looking at them. Then, the showroom doors opened, and in walked Daniel Carter, a middle-aged man dressed in dusty jeans, a plaid shirt, and worn-out boots. His pickup truck, parked far from the luxury cars, looked completely out of place. Ethan barely gave him a second glance, assuming he was lost or just looking around for fun. But Daniel wasn't here to waste time. He had worked hard all his life, building a farming empire that made him millions. Today, he had decided to reward himself with something he had always wanted, a brand new sports car. As he walked toward the car of his dreams, his eyes filled with admiration. But just as he reached out to touch the sleek red paint, Ethan stepped in his way. His smirk was unmistakable. "Sir, are you sure you're in the right place?" His tone was polite, but the doubt in his voice was clear. Daniel's fingers hovered over the car's smooth surface, but before he could even touch it, Ethan stepped in. His eyes scanned Daniel's worn-out clothes, and a smirk crept onto his face. "Sir, this car isn't exactly budget-friendly," Ethan said, crossing his arms. His voice dripped with fake politeness. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And," Ethan sighed, "we have more affordable options in the back. Maybe something used?" He gestured toward a section of older models, assuming Daniel couldn't afford anything better. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "I came for this one." Ethan forced a smile. "Of course, but we require a credit check before test drives." "You understand, right?" Daniel's smile faded. He could feel the judgment in Ethan's voice. Instead of arguing, he simply nodded. "Go ahead." Ethan walked off, assuming Daniel would leave once he realized the price was too high. But Daniel stayed, running his fingers along the car's sleek body, imagining himself driving it. Minutes later, Ethan returned, holding a paper. His expression had completely changed. "Ah, Mr. Carter," he stammered. "It seems you're pre-approved for any car in the showroom." Daniel grinned. "You don't say?" Ethan swallowed hard, realizing his mistake. He had just insulted one of the wealthiest men in the state. And now, Daniel had a decision to make. Should he let this slide or teach Ethan a lesson he'd never forget? Ethan's hands trembled as he held the approval paper. His eyes darted between Daniel and the luxury car he had just tried to steer him away from. I didn't realize, sir," Ethan stammered. His confidence from earlier had vanished. Daniel crossed his arms. "Didn't realize what?" Ethan forced a nervous chuckle. "That you were, such an important client." Daniel smirked. "So, if I wasn't important, you would have kept treating me like I didn't belong here?" Ethan's face turned pale. No, of course not. It was just a misunderstanding." Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "You judged me based on my clothes. You assumed I couldn't afford this car before even asking me a single question." Ethan swallowed hard. The other employees had stopped what they were doing, now watching in silence. Daniel let the tension build for a moment before he finally spoke again. "You know what? I'll take the car." Ethan sighed in relief. "Excellent choice, sir." "I'll get the paperwork, but not from you," Daniel cut in. He turned to the manager, who had been silently watching. "I'd rather have someone who doesn't judge their customers." The manager nodded quickly, motioning another salesperson over. Ethan stood frozen, humiliated, as Daniel walked past him. As Daniel drove off in his brand new car, he couldn't help but smile. He hadn't just bought a car, he had taught a lesson Ethan wouldn't forget anytime soon. Jake leaned against the counter, still shocked by what had just happened. He had misjudged a customer badly. The manager walked over, his face tight with disappointment. "Jake, we need to talk." Jake straightened up, hoping to save himself. "Sir, I swear, I just thought you thought wrong," the manager interrupted. "You let your assumptions cost us a major sale." "Do you have any idea who that man was?" Jake hesitated. "I mean, he didn't look like he's one of the biggest investors in the city," the manager snapped. And he just walked out of here with a brand new luxury car. But not because of you. Jake swallowed hard. He felt the stares of his coworkers. The manager sighed and shook his head. This isn't just about losing a sale. It's about respect. You don't judge a customer by their clothes or how they look. If you keep thinking that way, you won't last in this business. Jake looked down, embarrassed. He had spent years trying to prove himself, but in one moment, he had ruined his own reputation. Get back to work, the manager said, walking away. Jake exhaled, realizing he had learned a painful but important lesson. He wasn't just selling cars, he was dealing with real people. And if he wanted to succeed, he had to change. From that day on, Jake made sure to treat every customer with respect, no matter who they were. Marcus adjusted his tie as he stepped into the dealership. The bright lights reflected off the polished cars, but he wasn't here to admire them. He had come for something important. A salesman named Brian walked up, barely glancing at him. "Can I help you?" he asked in a bored tone. Marcus nodded. "I'm interested in that black sports car over there." Brian smirked. "That's a high-end model." "Are you sure it's in your budget?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Brian sighed. "Look, we don't do test drives for people who aren't serious buyers." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "Interesting policy." Before Brian could respond, the dealership's owner, Mr. Lawson, stepped out of his office. The moment he saw Marcus, his face lit up. "Mr. Carter." "Welcome back." Brian's eyes widened. "Wait, you know him?" Mr. Lawson laughed. "Of course. Marcus is our new business partner. He just bought a major share in this dealership." Brian turned pale. I didn't know." Marcus crossed his arms. "You didn't ask." Mr. Lawson shook his head. "Brian, if you judge customers like this, you won't last here." Brian stammered, but Marcus simply smiled. "Don't worry. I believe in second chances." Brian exhaled in relief. Marcus walked toward the black sports car. "Now, let's talk about that test drive." Brian nodded quickly. This was a mistake he wouldn't make again. The courtroom was filled with quiet whispers as David leaned back in his chair, smirking. He was one of the top lawyers in the city, and today he was up against a rookie. The judge called the next case, and the opposing lawyer walked in. But instead of an experienced attorney, a young woman, barely in her 20s, approached the bench. David chuckled. "This has to be a joke," he muttered. The judge glanced at her. "State your name." She lifted her chin. "My name is Olivia Carter, representing my client today." David shook his head. "Your Honor, is this even allowed? She looks like she just finished high school." The judge frowned. "Mr. Reynolds, she's a licensed attorney." "Proceed." Olivia remained calm. "Mr. Reynolds, would you like to continue underestimating me or actually argue your case?" The courtroom went silent. David's smirk faded. "Fine," he said, flipping through his notes. "Let's see what you've got." But within minutes, Olivia tore through his arguments with confidence and precision. Every point he made, she countered flawlessly. Sweat formed on David's forehead. This wasn't just some rookie, she was brilliant. By the time the judge ruled in Olivia's favor, David sat in shock. As she gathered her files, Olivia turned to him. "Maybe next time, don't judge a lawyer by her age." David sighed. Lesson learned. Jake had been working at the company for years, always doing his job without complaints. His boss, Mr. Benson, barely noticed him. Instead, he praised the loud, flashy employees who took credit for everything. One morning, Jake walked into the office and saw a new email. His eyes widened. Meeting in the conference room. Mandatory for all employees. When he entered, Mr. Benson stood at the front. "We have an important announcement," he said. "We're promoting a new manager today." Jake sighed. He already knew the type of person who would get it. Probably someone who spent more time talking than working. Benson cleared his throat. "The new manager is Jake Thompson." Jake blinked. "What?" Whispers filled the room. Even the employees who always ignored him turned to stare. Benson smiled. Jake has been with us for years, and his dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. He doesn't boast or demand attention, he just gets the job done. That's the kind of leader we need." The room fell silent. Even the employees who used to take credit for Jake's work shifted uncomfortably. Jake walked up slowly, still in shock. "Thank you," he said. Mr. Benson shook his hand. "You earned it." As Jake took his seat at the front, he realized something: hard work speaks louder than words. And today, everyone finally heard him. Tom had been working at the cafe for years. It wasn't the best job, but it paid the bills, and he got to talk to lots of interesting people. Most of the time, everything ran smoothly. But today was different. The cafe was busy, as usual, and Tom had just finished making a cappuccino for a customer when the door swung open. A man in a fancy suit walked in. Tom noticed the briefcase in his hand and the way he looked around like he was searching for something. "Excuse me," the man said, walking straight up to the counter. "I need to speak with the manager." Tom glanced at the clock. It was almost closing time. "I'm the manager. What can I do for you?" The man smiled, but there was something strange in his eyes. "I'm looking for someone to help with an important business opportunity." "You seem like the right person." Tom frowned. "I just run the cafe, nothing big." The man leaned in closer. "What if I told you I could make you a partner in a chain of high-end restaurants?" Tom stared at him, confused. Was this some kind of joke? "You're serious?" The man nodded. "I know a good opportunity when I see it. I want you on my team." Tom's heart raced. This wasn't what he expected when he came to work today, but now his life was about to change forever. It was a typical afternoon when Mark was walking home from school, thinking about his day. He had just finished a long math test, and all he wanted was to relax. But as he passed by the old diner on Main Street, something caught his eye. A man stood outside, nervously glancing at his phone. Mark didn't know him, but there was something about the man's expression that made him stop. He walked closer, curiosity taking over. "Hey, are you okay?" Mark asked. The man looked up, startled. He quickly shoved his phone in his pocket and tried to smile. Yeah, just waiting for a ride." Mark nodded, but something didn't sit right. The man's eyes seemed to hold a secret, like he was hiding something. "I've seen you around here before," Mark said, trying to make small talk. The man hesitated for a moment, then spoke in a lower voice. "I'm not just waiting for a ride. I'm looking for someone. Someone who's in trouble." Mark's heart skipped a beat. "Who?" The man glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "Your mom." Mark froze. How did this man know his mom? Was this some sort of mistake? His mind raced as the stranger's words sunk in. This was no coincidence. Something big was about to happen, and Mark had no idea what he was walking into.